Hello everyone, good day to all of you. Hope you're all doing well. Wanted to give a review today to talk about the SLH762TI-QD, their FDE version. Not that that really makes a difference as far as the performance is concerned, which I have right here. I have a very high round count on this. This will be a very long-term review. I'm at just around 10,000 rounds. Primarily, this has been shot despite it being a 308 suppressor. I've mostly been shooting this on the 5.56 simply because this 308, there were some technical difficulties with getting it mounted for the longest time, which obviously I finally did. But yeah, just some issues with how tight the factory flash hider was. But let's actually talk about the suppressor itself. So starting with the sound reduction and how effective that is. I did another suppressor test just a few weeks ago on the Cat WB, and similar here. I'll show you some footage I did at the range, just testing this at some different distances. Now understand, I did get some good feedback that the audio quality there, it's pretty average. I'm not using any fancy microphones, and I don't unfortunately have a decibel meter, do understand that. I did try getting one, and a lot of them are just not good. You need to spend actually a lot of money to get a properly functioning decibel meter, it seems like. So the footage you're going to see is at the range with this rifle, 308, and I'm just showing it at 25 and 15 meters. I did this whole tone test at 150 as well, but it just doesn't sound any different due to the microphone. Now as for myself and how this actually sounds in person, it is decent. So when I've been using this on the 5.56, it's okay there. It sounds mostly just kind of quieter, like a quieter gunshot, which you might say, of course, because it's a suppressor. But what I mean by that is compared to something like the Cat WB, which I will be bringing up on occasion because that's my main point of comparison because I own that one and have shot that one quite a bit too. The Cat WB has an extremely pleasant tone. Compared to this, it just makes it a little quieter. It is definitely more effective, as you might expect, on an actual 308, but even then, it's not the quietest thing out there. Moving on next to the flash reduction, this is something I have a very big problem with. So if you remember at the very start of this review, I said this is the SLH762TI. This is their titanium suppressor, and I didn't know this before going into it, but titanium suppressors, especially 3D printed ones like this one here, and this is also flow-through, which exacerbates the issue even further. These have a major, gigantic issue with sparking. So I want to play some footage. The worst sparking I saw, unsurprisingly, was with a short barrel. So short barrel, 11-inch HK416A5 is what you're seeing there. But same sort of pattern with how much it's sparking on everything I've tested this on. Whether it's a longer barrel 5.56, whether it's this 16.5-inch 308, or just anything in between, it will spark. So do understand that when you're going into it. Now, one thing on that sparking, which also actually relates to my previous point regarding the tone, is everything I've been testing here is with their flash hider. So Sig uses a proprietary mounting system on their suppressors called Clutch-Lok, and they make two types of adapters for them. This one right here is the flash hider. That is exclusively what I've been running on all of the rifles I've been testing it on. So do understand that. They do make a muzzle brake as well, which I'll talk more about this in a little bit. But this flash hider, you know, maybe you'd have better results with both the tone and maybe also with the spark up if you went with one of their brakes instead. I have a lot of things I want to talk about on the mounting system, especially since it is integral to these suppressors, but I first wanted to also touch on the flow-through. So this rifle is unloaded, not that it matters because you're through a camera, which some people don't realize apparently, but you can see there's 3 ports on the side, and then just your center port, of course, for the actual bullet to travel through. Now, this flow-through is not very effective. As I said, I've tested this on all sorts of platforms, 5.56, 308, and across the board, it's still pretty gassy back in my face. Now, it's maybe ever so slightly more efficient on the flow-through or back pressure reduction on the 308, which you would expect since it's able to utilize its inner geometry more efficiently with the proper size bullet. But yeah, I can still somewhat smell the gas even on this. Very, very similar to when I was using this suppressor on my 16.5 MR556, which is, you know, same gas system and pretty much the same amount of gas coming back through it. So pretty comparable there. However, when I've shot this on my 10.3-inch 5.56 SBR in the past, it actually will gas me out at around 5 to 7-ish rounds, which is very little. So it's pretty noticeable there. And if I compare that to that Cat WB I've been mentioning, which caveat there, only on 5.56 because there's a 5.56 suppressor, but that one, even on that 10.3, I don't get any gas whatsoever. I don't smell it, and I don't get it gassed out even with a mag dump, so a lot different there. As far as how much this changes the ejection pattern, how much does it overgas the system, it usually, so on this rifle for instance, usually this is ejecting about 3, maybe 230-ish, and with the suppressor it usually goes to about 130. So it's noticeable with how much it does overgas the system there. So now I did want to circle back and talk about the Clutch-Lok mounting system. So how this attaches is, you can see right here, this black collar. And do note, there is some finish wear on here now. That is because I recently cleaned this with some of the Cat 206 or 208, I'm forgetting their exact name, but some of their titanium cleaner, just to test if the tone would change at all after I clean this, since I do have a high round count on it. And it didn't, just by the way. But just as an aside, it will kind of eat up the finish on mounts. So do watch out for that. But what you'll see right here is you have two positions. You have a lock and an unlock, very straightforward. So you'll just rotate the collar. Right now it's unlocked, of course. And then just a couple turns to take this right off. You can see this does have a pretty big taper right there and some coarse threads. So I've shot about 2,000 to 3,000 rounds with their SLH flash hider adapters without the suppressor attached, just because I got these flash hiders long before the suppressor itself ever cleared with the NFA jail and all that. And I've never had any issues with the threads clogging up. If you look right here, this is the muzzle device I used to have on my MR556, which has the most rounds on it of any of the platforms I've shot it on. And you can see the threads are totally clean. If you're seeing maybe a little bit of what looks like some grit, that is because I tried using Aeroshell anti-seize on here, which, by the way, don't do that. That is not a very good idea. It has way too low of a operating temperature for suppressors, so it will burn off. Use something like copper or preferably ceramic anti-seize, much higher temperature rating on that. But I really like this mounting system, despite some of the other complaints I have with the suppressor itself. You can see how effectively it seals off carbon. So you can see the prongs themselves are just absolutely gunked up, pretty much permanently caked on carbon. I have tried cleaning this and just won't come off, but it doesn't really matter. Point is, the mounting surface right here is just completely clean. And same thing on this one, which maybe is a bit easier to see since I just took it off of here. This is about 300-ish rounds, I think I mentioned earlier, on this specific rifle, this specific flash hider and everything. So just an incredible job with how well it seals off the carbon. And also the suppressor, every time you mount it, returns to zero every time. I've never had any issues with it wandering around. It just, yeah, you'll see some zero shift obviously between unsuppressed and suppressed, but other than that, it's very repeatable, so not really an issue at all. And really the lock itself is more of a secondary, just kind of a safety measure. How this works is, if you look at where these 3 set screws are, on the inside, those just kind of hold these 3 little steel locking tabs in place. And when you have the suppressor locked, it just deploys those and they just kind of sit and provide a bit of extra friction so that the suppressor can't walk off. But the bulk of the work is being done by that really generous taper right there. Now, talking about the taper, I did mention earlier that I only have the flash hiders, which is technically not true. Now, the reason I say that is because when you buy the suppressor, or at least when I bought the suppressor, it does ship with one of their adapters, but this is one of the 25-degree, rather than a 90-degree shoulder, muzzle brake adapters, which is specifically for their MCX. So this is actually pretty impressive, though, I will say. I'm going to show you how this works right now. So their muzzle brake is a 2-part design. You can see you've got the front portion, which has the 2 ports, and you have the rear portion, which just you thread on just like normal, which is really cool. It makes it a lot easier because you don't need to really time it. You can see right here, the front portion just threads off, and you just have a crush washer here. So what you can do is you can just put this on to your barrel, just no shims required, and then torque it like normal. And then you can put this on separately, and with the supplied crush washer, just tighten this down. And then you can just time it using their crush washer. So that avoids the issue of, traditional crush washers can potentially make this not concentric with a muzzle. In this case, it's just to time up the front, which really is the best of both worlds. So I think this is really well thought out for ease of installation. Like I said, I never used it because this is the 25-degree version, which cannot be used on the 90-degree regular shoulder. And I did hear, I think, a Sage Dynamics review in the past where he mentioned that there used to be maybe a way to convert these to 90 degree, but if there ever was, I don't know. They definitely don't ship it with any method of doing so now anyway. I did also want to touch on, they sell a wrench, does not come with the actual suppressor itself. I did pick one of these up after the fact. It's a pretty straightforward, just a simple wrench here. Just in case, it can be useful to have one of these. This just interfaces with the front of the suppressor with these 3 notches you have, kind of like in an AR castle nut. You can just take this portion, the circular portion right here, and it just lines up. Makes it very easy, just in the off chance that it locks on. The only time I ever had that happen was when I very first got it, and that was just from switching it between rifles too quickly without letting the threads properly cool down. So that can really happen with pretty much any suppressor or muzzle device. So just be careful of that. Make sure to let this cool down all the way. Now, one complaint I do have about the Clutch-Lok mounting system is that Sig doesn't really offer a lot of muzzle devices for it. Like I said, you just have the flash hider, which is a 3-prong open, and I didn't know this beforehand, but these open tine types of muzzle devices do cause more baffle erosion, which I'm going to show you. So if you look at that right there, you can actually hopefully, and it's really hard to see, but you can hopefully make out that there is some pretty significant blast baffle erosion just in a very nice 3-prong pattern. But your only options are just the 3-prong, the muzzle brake, which I guess you could run just the back portion of the muzzle brake and just kind of like a minimalist type of muzzle adapter. But that's all you have compared to something like Griffin. I know for a lot of their systems they have a gigantic array of muzzle devices, or if you go to something like Plan B, which is pretty much open, you have all sorts of manufacturers that make muzzle devices for it. So next, talking about the weight on this suppressor, this is pretty lightweight. Makes sense, it is a titanium suppressor after all. Just weighs in right at 14 ounces. That is the advertised weight, and that is also the weight that I got when I actually weighed it myself. Of course, it's going to change a little bit as it fills up with carbon, but that was the initial weight, so very good. I like that a lot. The overall length, so this is 7.49 inches, and it's a little on the lengthier side for sure. On the other hand, for a 30 cal suppressor, that's not too bad. It's kind of in the general ballpark, so I don't really have any complaints there. So to close up, my own thoughts on a suppressor, would I recommend it? Absolutely not. It's not that it's that bad of a suppressor overall. If you look at it on its own merits, it does a lot of things okay. The Clutch-Lok, I will say, actually, I'm very impressed by. I do like their mounting system a lot. The tone, like I said, it's okay, but not the best there. The flash is a major problem. Now, you can mitigate that if you get their Inconel version instead of the titanium, but if you do go with their Inconel version, that weighs 21 ounces, and at that point, you're getting into a pretty heavy suppressor. Comparing it to a lot of the other options out there on the market, especially at this price point, this is a pretty expensive suppressor at 1.5K, but if you compare that to something like the Cat ODB, which is their 308 suppressor, that's only 1.3K, and specs overall seem a lot better on it. I bring that one up in particular because that's probably going to be the one I'm going to replace this one, at least on this build, with, and this can be used for, I guess, practice or something at the range. But just overall, it's not really good enough to justify the cost, and there are just such better options out there. I would recommend going with something else. So thank you all for watching. Hopefully you found this review on the Sig Sauer SLH762TI to be informative. Let me know if you have any other questions or your own experiences. Love to hear those as well. Comments below. Otherwise, take care. Hope to see you all in the next one. See you then.